So my talk is work-life balance for passionate developers. I usually make this a pretty interactive talk. For the sake of the video though, what I'd like y'all to do is if you have any questions, feedback, anything like that, write it down, make a note of it, and then I'm going to save some time at the end to where we can dialogue some more about this. So with that, we'll get started. So I've subtitled this talk, Put That Laptop Down and Get Some Sleep. I don't know if y'all are XKCD fans, but I'm sure you've seen this comic somewhere on the web before. It says, are you coming to bed? I can't. This is important. What? Someone is wrong on the internet. How many of us, we're very passionate about what we do. We end up getting on the internet, setting up with our laptops late at night, technical debates, arguments, trying to finish one last thing. Happens all too often. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and the impact it has on our productivity and our health. Before we do that, a little bit about me. I'm a PHP developer. I've been working with PHP on the web since 1999. That graphic, I love showing that off because that's not like a scaling problem. Back in 99, that was the PHP 3 logo. It's just none of us had a screen with a high enough resolution to realize how bad it was and how jagged those edges were. So, way back, definitely pre-Retina. So I'm a founder and CEO. I founded Creatuity in 2008. We're a PHP development firm. We focus on the Magento platform. I was actually inspired a lot by the movie Office Space. If you haven't seen it, it is a classic. And from the very start, I always realized that I didn't want to work in an environment like the traditional office, like the traditional cubicles, the traditional grind. And that definitely has tailored a lot of how I work and how our team works. So since we are talking about work-life balance, a bit about my life. I'm a frequent conference presenter, occasional open source contributor, definitely an over-tweeter. I have a lot of people that complain when I'm at conferences. I get a lot of unfollows because I tweet quite a bit about conferences. Hardware hacker, I love playing with both the Raspberry Pi and the Arduino. Read a lot of sci-fi. I'm an aspiring author. Hopefully soon that will no longer be aspiring. And for me, I just wanted to show you real briefly what work-life balance looks like to me because it's really different for everybody. So married, 2 cats, very, very spoiled cats. Have an office for our company in Europe and an office in the US, so I spend a lot of time with our teams, and then I do a lot of conference presentations. So work-life balance looks different to everyone. Some of y'all may be married, some of you may be single, some may live on their own, some may have roommates. It definitely looks a little different for everybody. Again, your work looks different. Some of y'all might be working remotely, some of y'all might be working from an office. Your life looks different. So what I would recommend, the early editions of this talk, I got a lot of feedback saying, wait, but my life doesn't look like your life. Don't focus on the specifics of, well, I have kids, or I have cats, or I have dogs, or I have roommates. Instead, look at the principles we talk about and think about how to apply that to your specific life, to your specific situation. A couple last intro items. You can find me on the web at joshuawarren.com or on Twitter at Joshua S. Warren. If you have any feedback at all, if you have questions or anything that we don't get to today, definitely reach out to me on the web or on Twitter. You'll also can go download the slides, and I'll tweet this link later as well. And do please give me feedback through that mobile app that the conference has, as well as if you just want to reach out to me and give me some feedback. Definitely always improving this presentation. Every time I talk to someone, I learn something new to add to it, so really welcome your feedback. So, diving in, work-life balance. What's that? It's real simple. It's funny, we used to always start things with dictionary definitions. These days now it's Wikipedia definitions, and Wikipedia calls work-life balance proper prioritizing between work and lifestyle. And it's interesting, when they say lifestyle, they talk about health, pleasure, leisure, family, spiritual development, meditation. So it's not just downtime, it's not just time with family, those sort of things. It's a lot of different things. The concept of work is fairly simple, but the life side of it is a lot more complex than we realize sometimes. And work-life balance itself used to be really simple. Back in the day, you worked 8 hours making widgets, and then you went home. Those widgets didn't follow you home. We didn't have laptops, we didn't have smartphones. Work stayed at work, home stayed at home. It was a very clear division. I love this old poster, basically, of how things used to be. 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for what we will. Because again, there used to be a very clear dividing line between I'm working in a factory or I'm working in this specific situation, doing this specific thing, and then I go home and I'm done. Today it's a little different. We work at least 8 hours. I know a lot of people, probably a lot of people in this room, that work a lot more than 8 hours on the average day. A lot of us will spend an hour or two commuting home. Then we're going to be checking our work email constantly on our smartphone. A lot of us are going to say, well, after dinner, I'm just going to finish one last bit of work. And again, back in the factory days, the old days, that didn't happen. You didn't go home and then keep working. So it's definitely very different now. Interesting graph basically showing how, on average, people are working 9 hours a day. And then all the other things that we try to cram in the day. This is an interesting study because it says we're on average sleeping 7.7 hours. But if you look at a lot of studies, it's saying that a lot of people are trying to get by on 6 hours of sleep, 7 hours of sleep, and they're just not as productive. So we're cramming a lot more into our day. So one analogy I like to use is think about when you were packing. When you were packing, if you flew in or drove in for the conference and you're packing a suitcase, I don't know how she does it, but when my wife packs, she has the smallest suitcase and it is always half empty. It looks kind of like this. I'm kind of the opposite. When I'm packing for a trip, I'm the one sitting on my suitcase trying to cram in as much as possible. Lately, I feel more like that, of definitely packing way too many things in there. And that's a really good analogy for our lives, for our day. Basically, we have a limited amount of room of what we can pack either in our suitcases or in our day. And we have to be really careful about what we choose to pack. And one big thing is if you aren't mindful of what you are packing into your day, other people are going to make those decisions for you. So if you don't make a conscious choice of saying, this is how I want to spend my time, your boss is going to make that choice for you. People are going to take advantage of that. Also, most of us are trying to pack entirely too much into our days. We're spending too much of our life focused on work, way too much on the work part and not enough on the life part. And a lot of y'all are probably thinking, and I heard some people in the hallway even earlier say this. They said, I don't have to worry about it. It's okay that I'm working 16 hours a day because I love what I do. I love my job, so that's all right. That's like the mantra of the overworked developer right there. And that's actually, as we'll see in a little bit, that's not okay. That impacts your life and your work a lot more than you realize. So you may also hear a lot lately about work-life integration. This is kind of a sneaky concept in my mind. There was an article in Fortune magazine that if you download the slides, that'll link you to it. And they said, if people enjoy what they do, there's no need to draw strict lines between work and life. Again, kind of that mantra of the overworked developer. If it's okay, I like my job. That's not necessarily a bad concept. However, if it's abused by your work, it will destroy your personal boundaries. When you try to integrate work and life and you don't have boundaries, bad things happen. It's very important to have healthy personal boundaries. It's critical for your self-worth, for your happiness, for fulfillment. So the very best attempts at work-life balance or work-life integration that I've seen use technology to allow their employees to alter their work to better accommodate their personal life. These are different things like basically just ways that you can have a more flexible day, have a more flexible job, and benefit your life and your personal time. The worst attempts, however, I've seen a lot of attempts at work-life integration where they use technology and peer pressure to take advantage of their most passionate, driven employees. For instance, the company laptop. I always like to look at that one because that can be a wonderful tool because then you can work from anywhere. But it can be a terrible tool because then you're expected to work from anywhere. So you have to definitely look and see with all these things, how is it being used? What is the culture? What are the expectations on me? And one thing, when you're looking at a work-life integration plan or something like that, there's a legal phrase called cui bono, and it means to whose benefit. So, for instance, if you're offered that company laptop, stop and think, okay, who is this really benefiting? Is this a benefit for the company or is it a benefit for me? And if it's a good company and a good culture, then it should benefit both. It's not, we can't expect, I always tell our team that I want to make work fun, But if we can't just get paid to play all day, that we do have to work. There's some work in the day. But at the same time, you should basically both benefit. The job should benefit and you should benefit from any of these work-life balance or work-life integration items. So the kind of dark part of this presentation, just to warn y'all, the personal case for work-life balance. Again, heard some people in the hallway saying, "Oh, I'm not too worried about work-life balance. It's not that big of a deal. You know, I'll worry about that later." This is where I like to get real and kind of show you why no, you need to worry about this now. And the simplest way to sum that up is 2,000 Saturdays. Average American or Canadian in their mid-30s has 2,000 Saturdays left in their life. Don't waste them. Don't spend them all working. Stop and think about that. Realize that our time is short. 2,000 sounds like a lot. You might sit there and say, "Oh, that's plenty of time." Think about how fast each weekend disappears. Think about how fast our experience here at this conference will be over. It will be a memory. It goes by fast. Also, that assumes you reach the average, and it's just kind of a sad fact in the development community and the web community. Every year, we're losing friends and colleagues before their time. I mean, we have basically an epidemic of bad health, of bad mental health issues, things like that. So this stuff is serious. Work is important, but life is precious and it's entirely too short. And I was inspired by all this. When you download the slides, Merlin Mann, he's a popular podcaster and author, presenter. He wrote a post called "How Many Saturdays Do You Get?" And he had a really good follow-up discussion on his podcast Back to Work about it. And the math he did, again, kind of relating this to your specific situation. In his case, he did the math and said, "I have 300 Saturdays with my daughter before she's old enough that she is not going to want to spend Saturdays with me." And he said, "Hey, that's a short number. You really need to realize that. You need to take advantage of the time you have." So now a funny cat photo of one of my cats to kind of lighten the mood. Sorry that was dark, but again, this is serious. So many of your coworkers, so many of the others in the development community aren't taking this seriously. They aren't thinking about these things. So I like to kind of shock us all with that so that we can spread the word that these things are really important, that how we spend our day, how we spend our life is an important choice we need to make. So on to some lighter things. The importance of personal time. There's a lot of different studies, and I'll link to some later in the talk, that show the importance that personal time has on us as individuals and as employees. So personal time, you obviously have to have it to develop and maintain healthy relationships for your own personal growth and development, for your own happiness and fulfillment. You may think, and I think a lot of us have been kind of lured in by the promise of, I'm going to do some really cool things with technology, I might make a lot of money, and that's going to make me happy. It's not. There's definitely some cool things that we're doing. There's some exciting projects I'm sure we're all involved in. But at the end of the day, that's not going to provide long-term fulfillment. Obviously as well, personal time is really important because that is when you can improve your health and you can lower your stress levels. It's really sad. There's a report from the Center of Disease Control and Prevention on the 10 leading causes of death. And over half of them are all things that basically, if we had better work-life balance and we're taking better care of ourselves, wouldn't be such a prominent cause of death. So now on to what I like to call a slightly less depressing, more businessy segment, the business case for work-life balance. So I talked to a lot of managers, a lot of team leads, a lot of business owners about work-life balance, and at the end of the day, they look at it differently. Obviously, they have to look at it as what's going to make the company money, what's going to make the company successful, that sort of thing. So if you are managing the team, this section's for you. If you are a developer or an individual who isn't in a management role, this is still really important because these are the things you can take to your boss, to your manager, and say, look, I want to talk about work-life balance, and here's why it matters to the company. Here's why it matters to you as a manager. So one message I try to get out every time I talk to anyone in the tech industry, any executives, is you're not running a factory. Stop treating your employees like factory workers. And this goes from everything all the way back to the concept of the mythical man month of, if I have a project with 10 developers on it and it's going to take a year, I'll put 20 developers on it so that it only takes 6 months. Because in a factory, that works. You put more people on the assembly line, more stuff gets done. We're not assembly line workers. That's not how this industry works, but there's still a lot of managers out there that look at it that way. Same thing with, they will assume, okay, if a developer can write this much code in 8 hours, if I push him and he works 12 hours, then he's going to write that much more code in that time. He's going to produce that much more output. And again, that's not the way it works. That does not work. Not only do you become less productive, but you are more likely to make mistakes. And so that's a really good way to drive a team and a project into the ground. Also, studies have linked personal downtime to increases in creativity, memory, learning, and problem solving. And again, if you are going to a manager to talk about this, download the slides, and each of those is a link to a different study that has documented that. The Washington Post did a survey, discovered that millennials, 40% of them will leave a company if it doesn't have good work-life balance. So if you want high-performing employees who are creative, solve problems, and help your business grow, you have to give them downtime. You can't expect to push them and push them and push them and have a successful team or have a successful company. So again, looking at the business side of things, then we'll look at the personal side here in a second. Implementing work-life balance at work, or stop working your employees to death. Even if you aren't a manager or a team lead, this is still really good information, because the only way these things change in a company is if everyone does it. Because if one person goes out there and tries to have a good work-life balance, but the rest of his team is still working 16 hours a day, it won't last. There's a lot of basically peer pressure and a desire to fit in a lot of our companies. So if everyone isn't on the same page, if everyone doesn't pursue this, then it doesn't work. First of all, work-life balance is not a perk. I see so many job postings like, we have great work-life balance, and they list that as a perk of why you should want to work there. It's not a perk. It's to me, it's a basic human right. It's an attitude of respect for each employee's life and their need for rest. So it shouldn't be treated as, here's this great thing we're doing for you. It should be, this is the minimum standard. This is what we do because it's the right thing to do. And healthy work-life balance requires a culture where employees feel safe disconnecting from work. I've seen so many places that will have, they will say in their job postings, we have great work-life balance. But then if you're not the first one in and the last one to leave, maybe that's mentioned under performance review. Or maybe people just kind of look at you a little different. Like, why are you leaving early, even if you're just leaving on time? So it's a cultural thing within the company. And you have to make employees feel safe when they're disconnecting from work. You also have to create clear boundaries and expectations between working and non-working times. It has to be easy for an employee to say, this is when I'm working, this is when I'm not working. So many of us, our work blends in to our personal time. We go home and we're constantly on our smartphones, we get our laptops out, we do one last thing, and we go back and forth between work and life, and that's not healthy. That basically, it doesn't benefit your work, and it doesn't benefit your life when you do that. So flexible hours, working from home, working remotely, those are all great things, but you have to create a clear boundary that signals the manager and the employee when the employee is working. I know a lot of us probably use Slack or HipChat or one of those systems, and they're great, but I know that I have it on my cell phone, and it's real easy for me to get a notification and say, okay, well, I'm just going to jump online and check into this real quick and see what's going on. And the next thing you know, I'm working. And that's not good. That's not healthy. And that's what I'm talking about here is basically there should be a clear expectation of I'm working right now or I'm not working right now. And if you're not working, then you shouldn't be working. And those flexible hours, remote work, those aren't an excuse or a justification for overworking employees. I see so many people that say, I have a great job. I get to work from home. I work 16 hours a day, but I'm working from home, so it's okay. No, it's not. That's not a justification for that. As an employee, if you aren't getting these boundaries, if you are expected to work 16 hours a day, if people are constantly interrupting your personal time with notifications, with urgent issues, with things like that, just ask for these boundaries. Just say, hey, I really need to have a conversation with you about clear boundaries between my work and my life. Going back to Office Space, I see some of y'all have seen this movie. So if you haven't seen it, Milton there has an issue because his manager takes his stapler away from him and he eventually burns the building down as a result. Please do not go back to work on Monday and burn down the building. Definitely, I've seen people try to address work-life balance with their boss, and they may not be yelling or screaming, but they're not being calm about it. They are not making calm, rational arguments. They're making emotional demands. If you go in there and you make emotional demands about this, your manager is going to dismiss you. He's just going to say, look, this guy, I don't even want to deal with this guy. I don't want to talk to him about it. He's crazy. I'm just going to get him out of my office and go on to the next thing. So please do, when you're talking to your managers about this, present rational arguments. Realize they're looking at it. First of all, they may not even realize there's an issue. No one else may have brought this up before. And then once you talk to them about it, show them some of these studies, realize they're looking at it from a business point of view. Their managers are expecting them and their team to produce a certain amount of work in a certain amount of time. So you have to talk to them about how, by respecting these boundaries, you can produce just as much, if not more, in the same amount of time. So definitely please be calm and rational about it. No burning down buildings. As a manager or even just a team lead, make sure to respect your employees' boundaries and your own. Lead by example on this. I had a guy earlier this year at one of these talks that told me, I've been telling my team, work 8 hours, don't work from home, get your work done, go home, have a life. And he said, but none of them are doing it. None of them, they're staying in the office 12 hours a day. They're answering my emails in the middle of the night. And I asked him, I said, well, how many hours a day do you work? He said, I'm usually in the office about 13, 14 hours.
Why don't you send email in the middle of the night? Why don't you send the email in the morning?
Yeah.
Why don't you send the email in the morning? Why do you send it in the middle of the night?
And yeah, exactly. That's the thing is the manager was sending emails in the middle of the night. I said, well, if you email your employees in the middle of the night, then they're going to respond in the middle of the night because they expect that. They think that your expectation of them is that you always have to reach them. So yeah, the managers have to realize if they're not working 8 hours a day, if they're working more, or if they're sending emails in the middle of the night, then that's what their employees are going to think is the right way to work at that company. And yeah, you can't do that. You have to say, okay, as a manager, I want my team members to work this many hours a day. These are the hours that I expect them to be reachable. And then you have to apply the exact same things to yourself, and you have to lead by example with that. So some popular options that I'm sure we've all heard of about work-life balance, telecommuting, 20 plus paid time off days, which it's always funny. I look at these companies like we have unlimited vacation. Like, okay, on average, how many vacation days does the average employee take? 9 times out of 10, unlimited vacation, no one's taking it. It just doesn't work. There's just this attitude of if you go on vacation, you're slacking off, or there's this attitude of when you go on vacation, I expect you to still be reachable and still be working. Compressed work weeks are interesting. That's where basically you still work 40 hours, but you do it like Monday through Thursday, and that way you have basically an extra day off. And then flexible schedules. And these options are great. I definitely don't want to make you think that I don't think these are good options, but if you just throw these out there, if HR just says, okay, we now have unlimited vacation, and that's it, no one's going to use it. You have to have that cultural change. You have to have that change that not only do we have unlimited vacation, we expect you to use it. It's okay if you use it. And again, that comes from the executives all the way down to the managers and team leads. So for example, instead of flexible schedules, which that is such an ambiguous term that I've seen so many companies abuse where they say, oh yeah, we offer flexible schedules. You have to work 12 hours a day, but we offer flexible schedules. Instead of that, set core hours. So one company, Darden Restaurants, their corporate employees have core hours from 9 a.m. to 3:30. What that means is you have to be in the office from 9 a.m. to 3:30, but the rest of your hours, it can be before that, it can be after that, it can be whenever you want. And that allows their teams to still have meetings, to still have face-to-face time, but then within that, you can still be flexible and can still do what works best for your individual life. And again, this is about changing the culture in our companies and in our teams. And the old culture was very much all employees must be in the same office at the same time or they aren't getting work done. If I can't see the team sitting together, talking to each other face to face 8 hours a day, they're not getting work done. Going back to office space, that's the whole, if you're not here at 7 a.m., then you're not a hard worker. And that's ridiculous. That is an old way of thinking that we need to get rid of. The new culture, the new way of thinking, it's important for employees to be able to collaborate, but their productivity doesn't suffer if they don't have the exact same hours. I mean, none of us are going to sit in a meeting for 8 hours a day with our teammates and be productive. That's not how things work anymore. It's important to be able to collaborate with each other. It's important to have either some overlapping hours, or I've seen some teams are able to kind of pull it off just using things like Slack and email. But again, you don't have to have everyone sitting in the same office at the same time all day long to be productive. So now, looking at our personal lives, looking at work-life balance at home, or I subtitled this one, rediscover those people and or pets living in your home. I'm sure you've all seen the jokes about like the couple whose cell phone dies when they're at Starbucks and they suddenly like rediscover each other for the first time. So definitely this is rediscovering the people and pets that we have in our lives. Very first thing to do is, again, set boundaries. Y'all are going to be so sick of the term boundaries by the end of this talk, but it really is the most important thing for you to take away today. And determine what you and your family are comfortable with and stick to it. And again, apply this to your own specific situation. You may be single, but you have roommates. You may have friends that you hang out with a lot. Whoever that is that you like spending your personal time with, work with them and set some boundaries that everyone's comfortable with. For instance, I have one of the interns on my team has, I think, 4 roommates that have the Xbox out in the living room right outside of his bedroom. All the time, day or night, they're always saying, hey, let's go play Xbox. Let's go play Xbox. And he basically had to set boundaries with them and say, okay, I'm going to spend a couple hours each day playing Xbox. Love it, not going to give it up. But at the same time, when I'm working, please don't come and ask me if I want to play Xbox because I'm working. So these boundaries, some people, that means work stays at work. I've seen basically some recovering workaholics that say, if I start doing any work at home, I will spend all night working. So they just flat out, until they kind of recover from that, say work always stays at work. Doesn't have to be that way though. There's other people that their boundary is from the time they get home until after their kids go to bed, they don't work. And then after the kids go to bed, that's when they'll get their cell phone out. They'll do an hour of work. They'll send some emails, things like that. Again, it doesn't have to be this hard line of this is work, this is life, but still adapt it, make it work for your situation. And this sounds, especially if you're thinking about something like work stays at work, that may seem like a huge change. Experiment with small changes. Start with small things first. Just try something. So for me, I decided, okay, I'm not going to work on my laptop in bed anymore. Laptop stays out of the bedroom. Whenever I'm resting, I just want to rest. I don't want to be distracted by a laptop. And it's funny, before I did that, I said, okay, I'm going to use Flux, which a lot of y'all have probably heard of Flux. It's an app that will adjust your screen to remove the blue light at night so that it won't impact your sleep as much. So I said, okay, I'll use that because then I'll work in bed up till the moment I want to go to sleep. I'll shut my laptop, I'll go to sleep. I used Flux, so the blue light won't keep me awake. Still was having problems sleeping. Flux doesn't work on an iPhone or an iPad. So then I got those $6 glasses off of Amazon, and they also filter out the blue light. And I said, okay, this will allow me to sleep better. I'll be able to work right up till I want to go to sleep, put my laptop away, go right to bed, no big deal. Turns out that didn't work. I still had a lot of problems sleeping, and it started affecting my work in the mornings. And I realized that it wasn't just the impact of staring at a bright screen. We hear so much about the blue light and how the blue light's keeping you awake. It's not just the light, it's your mind. You're not sitting there just kind of staring at the screen. You're interacting with the screen, you're working. You have your mind going a million miles an hour on work. It doesn't just stop. You can't just shut the laptop and then all the work goes away and you magically fall asleep. At least that's what I found for me. So That was one small change I made that was a huge benefit to me both in my personal life and at work. So know yourself. Take time to set priorities to help guide your own personal balance between work and life. Again, some people, you might have no problem at all. I used to be able to sit up on a laptop all night, shut it, go right to sleep. If you can do that, great. But if you're like me and you can't, realize that's kind of a limitation that you have and deal with it and set a boundary around it. So one thing I would recommend is track all of your time for a week, including the time you spend at home, and actually track and see where's your time going, how are you spending your time. There's a productivity blogger that has a whole series of tools called the Emergent Task Timer, Emergent Task Planner, things like that. Try out the Emergent Task Timer. And it's just a PDF you print out of basically a way to bubble in, almost looks like a Scantron test sort of thing. It's a way to bubble in how you're spending your time each day. I like using this instead of an app because I literally just keep it on my desk, and as I'm working, every once in a while I'll just jot down what I'm doing. Do that for a week, and the results will be really interesting. Most people, the time you're spending at home doesn't necessarily match up with your priorities. You are most likely spending hours of time on work at home that you don't even necessarily realize or notice. The time kind of flies by, it sneaks in between different things. And as you go through this, you'll realize that you're spending a lot more time on work at home than you realized. Once you've done this and you realize that, take a look at what your priorities are, take a look at how you're spending your time, and adjust until the two things line up. Also, treat your personal time the same way you would treat your work time. This is something that I see, kind of a mistake I see a lot of people making. If you have a minor issue at home, if you get a call that something very minor happened at your house, you're not going to just drop everything, walk out of a meeting at work, and go attend to it. You're going to say, okay, once this meeting is over, I'm going to go take care of that. Well, think about it the other way around. Don't give up your personal time just because there's a minor issue at work. So if you get an email about something late at night, about some minor issue, ignore it. Deal with it in the morning. And you will find very quickly, office doesn't burn down, projects don't fall apart, everything is still fine. So again, treat your personal time with the same respect that you treat your work time. Also, focus on your health. All of us could definitely use kind of some better habits when it comes to health. And I've seen so many people when they start focusing on work-life balance, if you focus on your health first, it will have such a big impact on both your work and your life. It will literally, you will have more energy, you will be more productive. A lot of people, it will basically help you clear your mind. A few different things that I like, and I've been experimenting recently as well with the Apple Watch, is focus on getting better sleep. I use the Fitbit to track my sleep, and that's actually how I discovered that Flux and all those other things weren't working. That's how I discovered that I needed to just turn the laptop off at night. Because I was able to actually see using Fitbit, it tracks your sleep, and I could see, okay, the nights that I'm on the laptop all night, I get significantly less sleep and lower quality sleep. Improve your nutrition, and this isn't, a lot of people think, oh, well, I'm not overweight, so I don't have to worry about this. Almost all of us are getting way too much sugar. Way too much sugar, a lot of us are getting way too much caffeine, and that has a bigger impact on your health and your life than you realize. You start tracking something like that. Again, I like experimenting with kind of a week at a time. So I used MyFitnessPal, which is an app, for a week and just logged everything I ate. And it was kind of scary when I looked at the numbers of just how much sugar I was eating in the average week. And again, you don't have to make major life-changing changes or major life-changing decisions here. You might just look at that and say, okay, I'm going to cut out a little bit of coffee each day. I'm just going to make a minor change. And you'll be really surprised at how big of a benefit you'll get from that. And then get some sort of exercise. I love the stand notifications and things like that in Apple Watch. It's amazing how many people I've heard talk about how just those little nudges to at least get up and walk. And even if it's just get up and walk around your office building, if you aren't doing that already, by making that change, you'll be amazed at the impact it has on your work and on your life. And even minor improvements to your health will have a noticeable impact on your work-life balance and in your enjoyment of life. And that's why I really can't recommend that enough. So I added a couple of special sections just because there's so many remote workers these days dealing with these issues. So work-life balance for remote workers. Hopefully we have a few gamers in the audience. I subtitled this one GLHF, Good Luck, Have Fun, because I do think that remote work takes a little bit of luck and a little bit of extra work to have a really good work-life balance. I found that remote workers, they tend to either have the very best or the very worst work-life balance. There's very little in between. And again, boundaries. It all comes down to boundaries. Set clear boundaries with everyone involved. And I'm not just talking about your managers and your work, but also your family, your friends, your roommates, the people in your personal life. Set boundaries with them. And specifically, ensure that your family respects your work time. Have a clear signal for when you're at work. Otherwise, work and life blend together in a very bad way. You end up working a lot more hours, getting less things done. So I know some people, they close the door to their home office. That means they're at work, and their family knows if it's not an emergency, let them work. Other people have, I've seen all sorts of cute systems of like flags and different things they put on their desks. So just figure out a way that works in your situation at home to let people know, yes, I'm at home, but I'm actually working right now. Goes the other way around too, though. Ensure your work respects your family time. Establish clear rules and expectations of when you will and won't be reachable. And again, I love and hate all the real-time communication tools we have these days. They're great. They make it so much easier to collaborate, but they also make it so much easier for work to intrude on our personal time. So even if you are working from home, let your manager know, these are the hours that I'm reachable. And then outside of those hours, don't check your email. Just take a break from it. If you're using something like Slack or HipChat, set yourself as do not disturb and just put a note on there that says family time or home time or off the clock, something like that. Make it very clear to your team that you've worked your hours for that day and now you have your personal time. Also, find a support group. A coffee shop, a co-working space, a makerspace. Find other remote workers and spend some face-to-face time with them. And I know this is really hard, especially in smaller cities where there maybe aren't as many remote workers, but these days there are co-working spaces popping up everywhere. Even if you're perfectly comfortable working in your house 40 hours a week, spend some time in one of these spaces. And that's because you need an in-person outlet for work-related stress other than your family. I see so many remote workers that sort of unload all of their stress from work on their family, and that's not healthy. Then I've seen some of those say, okay, I'm not gonna unload this on my family anymore. I'm just gonna kind of keep it all to myself because I don't know any other remote workers. I don't know anyone else to talk to about it. I'm gonna keep it all to myself. They end up, again, going back to Office Space, doing something like this, snapping and destroying a bunch of office equipment. So that's why it's very important to have some sort of group that you can talk to about your stresses as a remote worker. And now bringing it all kind of back to the title of Work-Life Balance for Passionate Developers. And this one, GLHFDD, good luck, have fun, don't die. For those of us that are really passionate about what we do, we have the hardest time at work-life balance because we love what we do. We love our work, so it's challenging. So I like to give an example. This is specific to PHP, but you can kind of translate this out to any sort of web technology. So you're a full-time PHP developer. You spend all day working with a custom app in the Laravel framework. So what I like to ask people is, to you personally, coming home and working on a personal project in Laravel, is that work? Would you consider that work, or would you consider that personal time? And that's where the lines start getting really blurred. And personal projects closely related to what you do at work aren't necessarily bad. It's not necessarily a bad thing to do something like that. The key really comes down to balance, to looking at the balance between how you're spending your personal time, how you're spending your time at work. And I would definitely recommend don't spend all of your personal time on a project that closely mirrors what you do at work. It's great to enhance your skills, to expand your skills. It's a must these days with the kind of jobs that we have. But don't spend all of your time on something that looks a lot like work. Split your personal time between projects similar to your work and completely and totally unrelated projects. Find something totally new, totally different. And again, I'm really a big fan of small changes because it's so much easier to make a small change, get some feedback from that, and keep going and kind of build on top of that. So if you usually work with the Symfony framework at work, learn the Laravel framework at home. So you're still coding, you're still doing development work, but you're doing something that's at least a little different than what you do at work. Once you've kind of gotten that mastered, start finding hobbies in unrelated areas. Spending your downtime learning a new hobby or skill is going to boost your creativity. If you do want to keep kind of bringing it all back to work and your success in your job, then know that when you're learning something totally unrelated, you actually are improving your work and how you do at your job. So if you're a software developer, buy an Arduino, start tinkering with circuits, do something different. That way you're kind of shifting, using a different part of your brain, you're using your hands more, that sort of thing. Combine your interests and your work with new hobbies as well. So I like speaking with developers, I like trying new beers. So every time I take a trip, whether it's for work or it's for fun, I like to find some local user groups, talk to some local developers, and get their recommendation for a good local beer. So it's a way to kind of blend the two so that I'm not always working. So work-life balance is hard, especially for those of us that are really passionate about our work. It's challenging. It's not easy. I think that a lot of the people that kind of dismiss it as, oh, I'm not going to worry about that, it's more of a mental block if they've realized this is hard, this is challenging. And instead of facing it, they kind of just ignore it. But it's important that we don't ignore it, that we address it, that we have conversations about it. And it's important to get it right because, again, those 2,000 Saturdays will be gone in a blink. So please set aside some time for yourself, set aside some time for your family, and just for some flat out plain downtime. Stop and think about how you're spending your time and what boundaries you do have in place and what boundaries you need. And a little bit of homework for y'all. Define one boundary between your work and your life, and starting on Monday, respect that boundary. Have a talk with your team, have a talk with your manager, and say, hey, I'm trying something new this week. I think it's actually going to make me a better team member, a better worker, but this is something that I need your support on, that I need you to respect, and try it out. After that week, try that Emergent Task Timer and see if the reality of what you're doing actually matches up with your priorities and with your boundaries. A lot of people, some of y'all, you may do that, and you say, great, it all matches up. I'm spending my time the way I want to spend my time, but I think most of y'all will be surprised when you see how much time is actually going to work that you don't even realize it. So with that, we have a little bit of time for questions. Definitely keep in touch. If you go out and you try this, or if you have a talk with your team or with your manager about it, send me a tweet or go to my website and send me an email. I would love to hear how it goes. I'd love to keep the conversation going. So thank y'all.